Welcome to the Early Edge College Football Pick Show, brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. I'm your host, Eric Cohen, and can you believe that we're already on to Week 12? Where's the time gone? But there's still plenty of money to be made, so let's bring in the stars of the show. He's now known as the master of the first quarter underdog. It's M squared, Mike McClure. Our next expert is up nearly 13 units in our Dogs of the Week segment. And yes, he did it again last week. It's Emory Hunt. And finally, he warned me at the beginning of the season that my Arizona Wildcats might struggle this season, and I refused to listen. There's a reason he's the expert. From the Cover 3 podcast, it is Chip Patterson. Gentlemen, let's talk storylines. And Week 11 brought a couple of upsets that I don't think any of us, well, one of them that we didn't see coming. So which team's loss was more detrimental to their playoff chances last week? Was it Miami's or Georgia's? Mike, we'll start with you.
I first want to say I did see Ole Miss coming over beating Georgia because I was on Ole Miss in that game and played them on the money line. So definitely saw that one coming. And it was Georgia. The loss is more important to them just because of the depth of the SEC conference and where everything sits right now. They need some help to get to the SEC title game. And if they're not in the SEC title game, it's really up to the committee and how everybody else performs. It's completely out of their hands, really, by losing that game. So I think it matters way more to Georgia. When you look at Miami, it just happened to be their first loss. Yes, they probably should have 3 losses or more on the season right now, but they don't. It was 1 loss. There's still a path for them to ultimately get to their conference, title game and get in. So I think it definitely hurts Georgia way more than Miami.
Totally agree. It hurts Georgia because you can't continue to keep explaining away losses if they keep piling up losses. And hopefully folks just understand maybe this is just not a good team. It's definitely not a good offense. And that's going to continue to be the issue for Georgia moving forward. But we know biases will try to fit a 6-loss SEC team in a postseason by some way of high water. They're going to try to make it happen.
But what if it's Ole Miss and Georgia fighting for an at-large spot? This head-to-head result could hit them on a lot of ways because, as Mike mentioned, this is going to make it a lot tougher for Georgia to get to the SEC championship. Miami, on the other hand, still controls its destiny in terms of reaching the ACC championship. You go beat the other opponent in there, you get an automatic bid to the college football playoff. But Georgia, in losing at Ole Miss, has not only made it tougher to win the SEC, it's made it tougher to win an at-large because it just might be that you and Ole Miss are fighting for an at-large bid. And after what we saw on Saturday, the committee's going to go with the Rebels all day, brand bias or not.
Well, I don't know about that, guy. I mean, I see where you guys are coming from, but Georgia also has that win at Texas, which has to mean something. Miami, who've they really beaten? I mean, honestly, I would love to see the Canes get in. Still, who've they beaten? All right, let's go to number 2. Emory, I'm going to start with you on this one. Is it possible for a 1-loss Boise State team who lost to Oregon in a valiant effort in Week 2 and an undefeated Army team, supposing they win out, including next week against Notre Dame, to both make the playoff? Emory, is this possible?
Definitely, if people stop being biased about, SEC, I'm going to keep standing on this bridge because at the end of the day, if it's supposed to be about rewarding teams that consistently win and win games and do a great job in winning these games, you got to reward those teams with the postseason. And if Army beats Notre Dame, expect them to jump from low 20s to the teens. If you notice, they have Washington State ranked right on that cusp too. And Boise State hadn't really moved. They actually lost a spot to 13. So the committee is telling you, hey, we kind of can see a path for another team to get in. And so if they're rewarding the 12 best teams by how they played this season, I can see a path if the Mountain West Conference champ, Boise State, runs the table and Army beats Notre Dame and continues to run the table and doesn't lose a regular season game.
Yeah, this is a situation that is mostly in Army's hands, in my opinion, right now, just because did you know that in beating North Texas, Army now, as of Saturday, has a win against a team with the winning record? That was their first. So I am all about how you play, not who you play. But the question that you've presented, EC, is about the committee and what the committee's going to think. So for this to happen, it is really going to be a Army runs the table type situation. Boise State ends up getting a high Mountain West champion, one-loss resume. So is it possible? Absolutely. But I do think that Notre Dame win is going to be what's required to get both the Broncos and the Black Knights into the playoff at the same time.
Look, it's possible. I don't see it happen because of the mess that we have in the SEC right now. When you look at the SEC to beat Tennessee this week, I don't see the scenario. I know Georgia's out technically right now. They're going to be right back in. They're going to be the last team in if they beat this team. The two teams that they ultimately lost to. You get Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is going to sneak in as well. And then it comes down to the Big Ten. You've got the top 4, the top 5 right now in their ratings, and then the Big 12. What happens there with that mess? So I just don't see it happening, unfortunately. I would love to live in the world where they both get in, and I would love to get respect there. But the SEC created a massive problem right now because they're getting 4 million. There's a scenario where they could sneak a 5th into what happens with some conferences here. All the way here.
So if Army somehow goes undefeated and Emory doesn't, and they don't make the playoff, I want a live look at Emory Hunt's home when they announce those rankings, because I know that he's going to blow a gasket, and it probably for good reason. I don't think it's going to come to that, so we won't have to worry about that, but we'll talk about that game next week. All right, with the SEC and Big Ten dominating the top of the rankings, which of the other two Power 4 conferences, the ACC or Big 12, is more likely to get multiple teams into the playoff? Chip, I know where you live, well, the vicinity, so I have a feeling what you're going to say. Let's hear it.
Well, I think that it is an SMU defeats Miami in a close competitive game. Both teams are dominant the rest of the way. That is a path where SMU would get the ACC's automatic qualifier. And if Miami is a one-loss team, and if they've been able to really flex their offensive muscles the rest of the way, then I could definitely see the ACC getting 2 teams in. The other teams in the Big 12, other than BYU, are much further down in the rankings right now. And I think that that's going to ultimately hurt the Big 12 in this battle to see who is more likely to get multiple teams in the college football playoff.
I will say the Big 12 because there's a path for BYU to keep winning. And if they beat Kansas this weekend, that's an impressive win for them. So if they keep winning and Colorado gets to the Big 12 championship game and beats BYU, I can see both Colorado, obviously, because they are the Big 12 champ, and BYU getting in. We have to stop with the facade of this is by merit and it's a TV product. So they will want Colorado in the postseason even if they lose to BYU, because they would have racked up a lot of wins in getting to the Big 12 championship game. But I think because of where BYU is ranked now and the path for them to go undefeated the rest of the way until they get to the title game, and Colorado being the brand, I think this is a way for Big 12 conference for the Big 12 conference to get both teams in.
I'm right there with you. It's the Big 12, and it's because of where BYU is rated right now. Like, personally, I'd like to see BYU rated around 11 or 12, not as high as they are right now, because I don't believe they're that good. They're a fine team. There's just a lot of great teams. But because of where they're rated, if they make it to the Big 12 title game, they're in. In my opinion, if they make it to the Big 12 title game, they're going to be in. And you get the scenario where if they play Colorado in that title game and Colorado wins, you're getting both of those in. But as Emory said, this is a product made for TV. You've got the best player in college football in Travis Hunter. You've got Shedeur. You've got Dion. If that's a possibility, it's probably going to happen here. So BYU, because they're rated so well right now, which, again, I strongly disagree with, I think it's hard to see them falling out if they're in that Big 12 title game.
There is no way a three-loss Colorado team gets in. BYU, I think, would have to go undefeated and lose to Colorado in the Big 12 championship game, and then both are in, just as Mike said. So that's what I think, and I agree with you, Chip. Miami and SMU, as long as the Hurricanes don't slip up again, I think a pretty good bet there. I think both conferences could get 2 in. We'll see how it plays out. All right. For more information like this and a bunch of other things, check out sportsline.com for best bets and model picks, AI picks. Our new Discord server is up this week. Use promo code WINNERS for 60% off an annual plan. That's a better deal than you can get at any point or anywhere on the site. 60% off using promo code WINNERS. Coming up next, South Carolina has won 3 straight games, each by at least 3 touchdowns. With Missouri coming to town, can they continue their hot streak? We'll make our Week 12 selections here on the Early Edge College Football Pick Show. Welcome back to the Early Edge, and it's a battle of 7-2 ACC teams who need some help to make the conference championship game. But there's still some hope for Clemson, who is laying 10 points on the road this week at Pitt, a team that was undefeated and then lost 2 in a row. Emory, which way do you lean this week?
All the way with Clemson, because again, this is an opportunity for them to stack a style points type victory against Pitt. Pitt was probably one of the more shaky undefeated teams when everyone was undefeated. And so now we're seeing them on a 2-game losing streak. I think they make it 3 because Clemson knows that they have to keep winning and have to win by a lot of points. And this will be one of those situations where they do so. So lay these points with the Tigers.
Completely agree here. Clemson, it seems like we said this a couple of times now. They have another opportunity, and they still have an opportunity here. And I ultimately think that they're well equipped to take advantage of it. They had the frustrating loss, obviously, at home against Louisville, but I think this is a great opportunity for them to bounce back and really put up some points. And it's also about Pitt. They've sort of regressed to I wouldn't say it's a bad level. Like, they're not a bad football team by any means. They just were drastically overperforming the first 7 games of the season, and this is a lot closer to what that baseline we really thought that they would be for this season. So just considering what's on the line, and as Emory mentioned, style points mattering, I think this line should be closer to 14.
Oh, building right off of what Mike just said, because the regression to me has been on the offensive side of the ball, and the reasons should actually be quite apparent. It's a tale as old as time in college football. You hire a new offensive coordinator. You've got a new starting quarterback. You catch everyone by surprise, and Caden Bell did a good job bringing that offense from Western Carolina, and being able to go out there in wins against West Virginia, in wins against Cincinnati. But now that Pitt's gotten into conference play, and now that everyone's gotten tape on them, the adjustments have led to much less production offensively. Eli Holstein has regressed into a player that couldn't get on the field at Alabama. And I do think that Clemson's defense is the best unit on the field in this game. I look back to that Virginia Tech game. The Tigers' offense was not fantastic, but they just knew they were going to be able to squeeze the life out of the Hokies. I think that Dabo would be more than happy winning this game 24-10 or something along those lines, which, hey, that would be a cover for Emory. That would be a cover for Mike. I just don't have enough confidence right now in where Clemson's offense is to go ahead and lay the whole 10, but I do think Clemson wins in a lower scoring game. Give me the under.
Chip, I don't know what it is this week, but you and I agree a lot. That might be the first time all year, but I love it. Give me that under 54.5. In the last 8 Clemson road games, the under is 6-1-1 dating back to last year. And they're averaging the combined points in those games less than 42 per game. The Panthers look broken on offense, and we don't know Eli Holstein's status after that concussion last week. Give me Clemson 31, Pittsburgh 14. All right, South Carolina, Missouri, a battle of ranked SEC teams. I don't think Missouri is going to be ranked much longer, but hey, I'm just getting ahead of myself here. South Carolina's blowing teams out. They've won 3 straight by 21 or more, and they're giving 12.5 to the road team this week with a total of 44.5. Mike, we'll start with you. Which direction are you leaning?
I'm looking at an over here in this one. You see the total. I'm going to call this an ugly over. We talk about this in the NFL a little bit at times. I just think there's a path to points being put on the board here, whether it's defense generating offense or not. So when you talk about South Carolina, they've been good offensively in some of these matchups like this, but they're also good defensively. And this Missouri team, while they're missing Brady Cook desperately at quarterback, there's more time, more experience coming in here. They got a big win. They needed it badly against Oklahoma. They figured it out. I think this is a spot where we just get to an ugly over here. Even if it's a 24-21 kind of game, 27-20, that's what this one has the makings of here. So give me the over 44.5.
So Mike saying 24-20, 27-21, which ties right to be taking Missouri plus a points here. These are the type of games that we're seeing right now in college football, where the team that comes in riding high, and now you're starting to throw that P word around, playoffs for South Carolina, and they're ranked, they're a surprise team in the SEC, and then teams get cut at the knees. And this is a team in Missouri, for one thing, they're scrappy, so they will fight you from start to finish. I think this game is a lot closer than people believe. They're a lot closer to each other than many believe. So I like this one to be a lot tighter than this 12.5-point spread. So I'm going to take the Tigers and the points.
I'm going with America's team, the South Carolina Gamecocks, to get Missouri out the paint. Missouri, more like mid-Zuri, because that team is regular. And regular teams don't need to have tiny little numbers beside their names. And I don't need Eli Drinkwitz getting chesty and calling for receipts after winning a game like you did against Oklahoma. That ain't the game to get all chesty about just because you won a completely bananas haywire game back and forth. South Carolina has been playing its best football of the season over the course of the last 3 or 4 weeks. Lenore Seller's finally healthy. The run game has good compliments. You look at the defense that has been nasty all year long. Kyle Kennard putting together his argument for the SEC Defensive Player of the Year with the way he terrorizes opposing backfields. Give me the Gamecocks to win the Battle of Columbia and snap the losing streak to Missouri.
Everything Chip just said, spot on. I love South Carolina in this game. Think about Missouri's 2 road games in the SEC. They lost by 34 and 31. That's not very good last time I checked. And also Brady Cook, their starting quarterback, I just don't see him playing this week. And I don't trust Drew Prine to do much. I know what happened in that weird game against Oklahoma last week. Their offense is going to be non-existent. South Carolina 33, Missouri 10, blowout city. All right, we're not done with the Week 12 top matchups. Will Georgia miss the college football playoff if they lose again this week, or would a second loss doom Tennessee? Find out next on The Early Edge. Back on The Early Edge, and let's start with a game we know M Squared will be paying close attention to in the Big 12. It's 7-2 Arizona State, 7-2 Kansas State. I thought we would be going to M2 for M Squared first. Nope, Emory. You can't. Come on. You know where my allegiances lie. You can't be making this pick on this show, right?
I only talk football. I don't talk fandom. And when you think about this game, it is all about tight matchups. Kansas State and Arizona State, I feel like are very similar teams. And so for me, with both being 7-2, with Kansas State still having a chance at the CFP or Big 12 championship game, and also Arizona State knowing that, like, hey, man, we could kind of ruin their season. I think this one will be a lot tighter than this 8.5-point spread. So I'm going to take the Sun Devils plus the points here. And you might get Skaterboot back in the lineup. So that'll be a big boost for their offense.
You know, I think this game could be competitive down the stretch, but I like Kansas State early. I laid the 2.5 with them in the first quarter. And it really comes down to the fact that this is a home game, Bill Snyder Family Stadium. They have a decent home field advantage. They've had time to prepare for this game, and they know what's on the line. So I like them coming out of the locker room to at least be able to move the football and put points on the board early in the first quarter. Where I worry about them is in the second half, after Arizona State's had some time to make some adjustments. And Kansas State, just the style of play, they find themselves often in shootouts. And I think that could be in store again here in this particular spot. But I like them early here. Lay the 2.5 in the opening quarter.
Yeah, the key for me is going to be running the football, because Avery Johnson, the opposite a run game that is productive, can be effective with the downfield pass attack. But if they are not making defenses overcommit to stopping the run, then all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier to confuse Avery Johnson and to really limit what they're able to do pushing the ball down the field. After they struggled so mightily last time out, you've got an off week to make sure Avery Johnson's back to full health, as good as he can be, to put together your game plan, to make sure that you are balanced offensively. I think we will get some of the best performance that we've had from Kansas State in a couple weeks. So I do like the Wildcats to be able to cover here.
Yeah, and I do too, Chip. I think coming off a bye week, Arizona State dealing with injuries, including Cam Skattebo, who's going to be first team all Big 12 at running back. Kansas State also has by far the best rushing defense in the conference, giving up less than 100 yards per game. They haven't played great their last 2 games. Maybe that bye week gets them back on track. By the way, Arizona State 1-2 on the road in Big 12 road game or in Big 12 games. Does that win over 0-7 Oklahoma State count, especially after a 4-hour rain delay? I say no. Kansas State 34, Arizona State 20. All right, it is a battle of SEC teams that really, really matters this week. Number 7, Tennessee. Number 12, Georgia, the game of the week. And Georgia is somehow giving away 10.5 points. This one is a very strange line, but Mike, you aren't buying it. You love the Volunteers.
I do. And look, I think the line tells you Nico's not playing in this football game. If he was, the line would be 7.5 to 8. But I don't think it's as big a problem as people might think that it is here. When I look at this particular situation, backup quarterback here, he knows the playbook better than Nico does. He's been in this system his entire career. He's worked with Josh Heupel a lot. And I think that the changes that might come forward, like, yeah, he's not as good as Nico, clearly, but it's not a touchdown drop-off between the two. It's about 3 points maximum. And when I look at this particular spot, the thing that could change here is the tempo could slow a little bit. They could run the football a little more, which keeps the clock running and keeps this game a little lower scoring and tighter. When I look at Tennessee, they're a lot like Ole Miss in certain ways, and it's because of that defense that's kept them in games. Their defense is good enough against a struggling Georgia offense. If you're a team like Georgia, if you don't have like an opening drive touchdown here and success early, doubt starts to creep in a little bit and frustration starts to creep in, especially coming off the way they lost that game in Oxford. So I like this number here. I played it personally at 11, still like it at 10.5. And if Nico's ruled in, this thing goes back to 8.5 immediately.
Yeah, give me Tennessee in the points, man. I've seen enough of Carson Beck throwing the football to know that Tennessee will get a turnover in this ball game. And if you're a defense of the Volunteers coming into this matchup, you got to feel confident, because normally we're talking about, man, how are they going to stop these 3 running backs? How they're going to stop, this elite level tight end? How they're going to stop this elite level wide receiver? Who on Georgia's side, respectfully, scares you from a defensive perspective? No one. So you kind of feel good about, hey, we can stop the run. Our guys can cover their guys, and at the end of the day, we'll get a turnover or 2 from Carson Beck. So with all of that being said, the defense will keep them in this game, maybe even try to win them this ball game. But offensively, they can run the football. That's underrated about this offense. And also, this will be a lot tighter because of the significance of this matchup. I know they don't want to hear elimination game, but this is essentially an elimination game for both.
Yeah, Lane Kiffin after the win was just giddy at the fact that Georgia had just resulted to like throwing screen passes and running like scared children away from the Ole Miss defensive front. And guess what? Tennessee can do many of those same things that Ole Miss did. I think Georgia's offense is really lost right now. Carson Beck and his nation-leading 12 interceptions, certainly among the reasons why, but they cannot run the football with any kind of effectiveness. I don't think they're going to be able to do that here. So when I look at what Tennessee is going to do, I think they will run the football. I think they'll play great defense. I think they will try to out Georgia, and that means the best bet. Ooh, just like putting on an old comfortable jacket, baby. First half under. We get it at 24.5.
Of course you're going in that direction. Chip in the first half unders. We should know better. Emory, I know you're the president of the Carson Beck fan club. We'll talk about that one later. Tennessee only giving up 12.6 points a game. Georgia 18.4. Where are we getting this line at 48.5? I don't understand. The Vols haven't given up more than 19 in a game this season. And as Mike said, we don't know if Nico, I'm not even going to try his last name. You've given it to me before, Chip. Emory, yeah, we'll try that another time. He's not going to play. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, he's not going to play. So I like Georgia here to win this game, but because of their kicker, look out for Peyton Woodring, one of the best kickers in America. He's going to have 4 field goals this week. Georgia 26, Tennessee 16. Our last game of the week, number 1 Oregon at Wisconsin on the road, jump around. It's a night game in Madison. This one is going to be, I think, fairly interesting. We'll just say that. Chip, how do you see it?
8th game in a row for this Oregon team. 8 games in a row. We've seen 7 games in a row. We have not seen many power conference teams have to play 8 games in a row. So let's see, okay, the offense, no, Dylan Gabriel's still cooking. Even his wide receivers are getting moved in and out. But on the defensive side for this Oregon team, we might have some value. Saw Michigan be able to spring Colson Loveland loose. Saw Billy Edwards be able to move the football against this Ducks defense. This team total for Wisconsin playing at home under 20 points. I think that's where we find value. Oregon just wants to land the plane, get to the off week, beat Washington, and get to Indianapolis for Wisconsin going into this game, a little bit of extra time to prepare. I think the Badgers will have something cooked up for the Ducks. Wisconsin, team total over 19.5.
I like Oregon this one, and the big reason why, they can smell that bye week, and they know they're going to get this team's best bet or best shot in this ball game, because that's what happens when you're number one. You're going to get everybody's best shot. And because of that, and also because, hey, we get an off week. If we just go, all out this week, we get to have that rest. I think they take it to Wisconsin. So I'm going to lay these points comfortably with the Ducks.
I like the points here as well. I'll lay the 14. I made the number 17 in this game. And look, it's just a testament to how strong this Oregon team has been. And I will say with Chip, I think that there's a scenario here where they give up 20 points and still cover this number and win in big fashion. You see with the graphics team here, the big point differential here. I think it continues in this particular matchup because I just think Oregon is going to have chunk play after chunk play in this particular game. I think they run it up. I think Gabriel continues to make a Heisman case, and ultimately Oregon cruises to another victory.
I'm going with the under 52.5 in this game because over the last 5 games, Oregon's second half defense has been unbelievable, giving up just an average of 6.2 points per game. The Ducks, I know they scored 31 points in 9 straight games, and they've allowed 18 or less in 7 of 9. Only Boise State and Ohio State have crossed that number. The Badgers have been under this total in 7 of 9 games this year, and it's going to make it 8 out of 10. And Mike's line of 17, I think is spot on. Oregon 31, Wisconsin 14. Now, we've gone through the top games, but it's time to see our Week 12 best bets, my favorite segment of the show, coming up next. It is time for best bets here on the Early Edge. Look at Emory and Mike. They are crushing it. Emory's 16-6. Mike has made a late run at him here, 14-8, and I've alternated 1-1s for the last 10 weeks. So one of mine's going to hit, one's going to lose. Just, follow the other 3. We're good. All right, guys, it is time for our best bets. Emory, you're going to start us off as you are still atop the leaderboard. So impressive with your record in this segment this year. Give us your first pick.
Remember how everybody loved JMU after they beat North Carolina and they just kind of fell off the map? This is still a very good offensive football team. Defense, all right, they give up a little bit of points, which is why this spread is a little bit closer than people believe. And also, Old Dominion has shown they have some punches too. So I like the offense in this ball game, but I like JMU's offense a little bit more. So I'm going to lay the 2.5 because it's such a low number with JMU.
And I'm going to go to Tennessee. I played Tennessee plus 11 here against Georgia. I just think the number is too big considering the circumstances. The way I read it, the market is telling you that Nico's probably not playing in this game. If he does, the number moves back to 8.5, and we've got a great number at 11. 11 becomes a key number in football games in general, particularly one that I think could be lower scoring with how good this Tennessee defense is. But the backup quarterback here, they call him the gas pipe. What an awesome nickname there. He's got an electric arm. He can throw the football down the field. You watch the second half of the game he played, drew 3 defensive pass interference penalties. Not something you should discount when you talk about playing this Georgia team, especially if the game is tight. They're in desperation mode, attempting to save their season here. I think this is a great spot to back him because he knows the offense better than Nico does. I think Josh Heupel is incredibly confident with him in there, and I think this team is going to rally around him. But it's really that defensive front. They're identical to what Ole Miss was able to do. Very similar game. They're not going to win by double digits like Ole Miss did, but they are going to keep it within 11 here. Give me the Vols plus 11.
Staying right there in Athens with a lot of the things that Mike just described. Tight game, lower scoring, potential backup quarterback playing on the road situation. Definitely seems like one of those spots where neither team is going to take a lot of chances early because you can't win the game early, but you could lose the game early. So give me the first half under 24.5 in Georgia and Tennessee.
I'm going to the Fun Belt this week for my spread pick. Give me Marshall minus 8.5 over Coastal Carolina. And yes, I said it right. The Fun Belt, not the Sun Belt. Marshall 8-1 against the spread this year. It's pretty darn good. Their only against spread loss was a 5-point win over Louisiana Monroe. The last 2 road games for Coastal Carolina have not gone so well. 32-point loss at James Madison and 14-point loss as a favorite at Troy. It's kind of a strange line considering Coastal Carolina just beat Appalachian State by 2 touchdowns as a 2-point home underdog last week. But we're sticking with the trends, and Marshall isn't letting us down. Marshall 37, Coastal Carolina 21. All right, Emory, sending it back around. This is an interesting line. USC has struggled lately, and now after a bye week, they're back home against Nebraska.
Listen, we watched Jordan Miava play last year at UNLV and was outstanding for the Rebels. And I was wondering why he transferred out to go to USC based off Miller Moss in the bowl game we saw him have. It's like, man, that's unfortunate because he could have just stayed at UNLV, but now he's the starter, and I think he actually fits this offense better than Miller Moss. The run game was there. The QB run game is going to be there, along with his big plays in the passing game. And Nebraska is just reeling right now. So I will lay these points comfortably with USC. And they're wearing those 1972 throwbacks with the black cleats and the low socks. Give me USC all day.
Oh, we love the good uniform games. All right, Mike, I got to say this, best bets, Kansas State, we threw them in our games of the week. I knew that there had to be something here. You had to include your Wildcats in the best bets this week.
Yeah, EC, it's just a friendly number here on Kansas State in the first quarter, -2.5. Look, it is a night game at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. They've had extra time to prepare. They're still ranked relatively well, frankly, for their record in the college football playoff standings, and they got to go win football games. But just the fact that you get extra time to prepare, I like them out of the locker room on scripted drives. I think they bounce back in a big way early here, and it's just a friendly number. And when you talk about Arizona State coming in, it's not the easiest place in the conference to go in a night game. That's where you expect to see that false start penalty early that kills an opening drive, things like that. So for me, at a friendly number, the fact that I can get this with a field goal, I feel really good about Kansas State in the first quarter, -2.5.
Chip, the Atlantic Coast Conference matchup we've all been waiting for. Syracuse at Cal. Love the geography on that one. Which way are you leaning?
To soap, okay? We're leaning with soap because I don't know if you heard of Fran Brown, but he admitted this week that after a loss, he doesn't like to shower, because only winners deserve soap. And do you know how long that flight is from Berkeley to Syracuse, New York? Do you know how stanky that flight would be if you don't get a chance to shower after the game? In all seriousness, this is a Syracuse team that blew it against Boston College. They outgained the Eagles. They had more first downs than the Eagles. They had a trio of turnover on downs. They had a fumble that led to a touchdown, and they lost by 6 points. Kyle McCord can score in a game that I do think the way that Cal has been playing could end up getting a little loose, like their game against Wake last Friday. Could be a little bit of a back and forth. I just think the Orange have got too much offensive firepower to think that they're not going to be able to hang within a touchdown. 8.5 is too many daggum points when soap is on the line.
I don't even know what to say about that, but I'm just going to transition to my late night special overline. It's after 10 o'clock on the East Coast. You're staying awake. It's undefeated BYU. It's Kansas. The line is only 3, but I'm playing the over 55.5 because Kansas is on a streak of 6 straight games of 56 or more total points. BYU in 4 home games has scored 38 points twice and 41 points twice. They're averaging 39.5 points per game. This one is going to be an absolute shootout, except it's going to be really, really cold, like 6 degrees or even colder than that. I've never been in weather that cold. Heck, I live in Arizona. I don't know what that's all about. But those BYU and Kansas players, they're used to it. That's why this game is flying over. BYU 38, Kansas 30. All right, let's recap our best bets. Emory is going with James Madison -2.5 and USC -8.5. Mike is going with Tennessee +11 and Kansas State in the first quarter -2.5. Chip is going with the under 24.5 in the first half of Georgia, Tennessee, and Syracuse +8.5. I am going with Marshall -8.5 against Coastal Carolina and the Kansas BYU over 55.5. Now, coming up next, which Week 12 upset favorites are on upset alert? Can Emory Hunt pick another upset winner? Find out next on the Early Edge. Welcome back to the Early Edge, and it is time for our Dogs of the Week. And look at this, Emory, in 11 weeks, he has picked 7 underdog winners of at least +150. It is absolutely remarkable. He is up nearly 13 units, as I mentioned at the start of the show, after UCLA's win over Iowa last week on Friday night. If you're not betting these at this point, what are you doing? But Mike, we're going to start with you first because we got to go to our first quarter play. You are the master of the first quarter underdog. What do you got?
A game that my best bet is in. It's going to be Tennessee and Georgia. Give me Tennessee's first quarter money line here, plus 210. If you've watched Georgia at all this year, when have they struggled most? Definitely starting football games, right? Now, the second thing here is I think there's a 99.9% chance that Kirby Smart defers to the second half if he wins the opening toss. Obviously, he likes to anyway, most games. But if you're facing potentially a backup quarterback, the best thing you could possibly do is let your defense force them into a 3-and-out, have good field position for that offense with the place rocking. There's no chance Georgia is taking the football if they win the coin toss. So if that happens, Tennessee's defense on the field can stop this Georgia offense that plays slow. Half the quarter is essentially gone already. This implies 32% that they don't win, that 32% chance of being ahead at the end of the first quarter. I will take my chances on that because I think this number is a lot closer to 40%, which is a massive, massive edge here. Give me Tennessee first quarter money line plus 210.
Emory, I know you're confident, like extra confident in this segment because you're 7-4. You're up a bunch of units. You're making people a lot of money. You gave us Florida A&M in week 3 against Troy. All right, that didn't pan out as like a plus 1,100. But this week, you're going kind of out there with this pick. Let's hear it.
Well, yeah, they thought last week was out there with UCLA beating Iowa, but here we are once again with another hit. And so when you look at this one, San Jose State versus Boise State, the reason why I like this matchup for San Jose State, Ken Niumatalolo, outstanding head football coach. One thing he knows is the run game. One thing San Jose State does rather well this year, stop the run. And when we're talking about stopping a run, we're not talking about just completely shutting down Ashton Jeanty. What we're talking about doing is what UNLV did and what I noticed on film when breaking down Ashton Jeanty's tape. If you beat him to the line of scrimmage, he doesn't have the real lateral agility to make a guy miss or create his own shot. So expect him to front load the run game, stop him at the point of attack, make Maddox beat them consistently throwing the football. I think that plays right into the hands of San Jose State, who also can score. They want to go into a back and forth game because their offense is explosive, big play offense. And if you are getting into a back and forth affair, that favors San Jose State because then they will start to believe they can pull off the upset, the shocker around college football. They knock off Boise State.
All right, so Chip, Emory's giving out a plus 390. I'm thinking, all right, that's the riskiest pick by far that we're going to see on the show this week. And then I see yours. I'm going, wait, what? Arkansas at home against Texas?
Well, as always, it's very important to check with the Arkansas Gaming and Fish Commission website and calendar for all of your key dates, because last weekend was an off weekend for the Hogs. That's a good chance for them to get a little bit healthier after Ole Miss ran right through them, and a good chance for all those Arkansas season ticket holders to celebrate the opening of modern gun season when it comes to their deer regulations within the state of Arkansas. So that means you got all your hunting out of the way last week, and this week there is no debate of where mom and dad want to go, because it's not out in the deer stand. It's the Section 33 to go root on the Hogs. Because tell me, what is your favorite Texas win? What is the victory that the Longhorns have that have you emphatic that this is the third best team in the country? Because while they've done a good job on beating up on a lot of lesser teams, I do not think that the wins that we thought were so impressive look all that impressive now with a little bit of hindsight, now with a little bit of context. This is an Arkansas team that in the middle of their defensive line has absolute game wreckers. This is an Arkansas team that showed us with a victory at home against Tennessee that they can take down one of the big dogs. And while Quinn Ewers finally looked really healthy and back to his full form just last week, that offense was a little bit slow to get going, and it required the complete incompetence of Florida's offense to even give them that opportunity. And so as I sit here in our underdog competition so far back of our pace setter, sometimes you just need to throw, just like a long archery bow right across the entire forest into a winner. And I think that winner is Arkansas plus 385.
How can I argue with that? Instead, I'm going with a stinker here, and I apologize for this pick because this game really... Rutgers plus 185 at Maryland. Let's play the transitive property game here for a second. 3 weeks ago, Maryland lost at Minnesota by 23. Last week, Rutgers beat Minnesota at home by 7. That's all I got. Now, I mean, in all seriousness, I think that star running back Kyle Monangai for Rutgers will be back this Saturday. 931 yards rushing and 10 touchdowns this year. The team already won at Virginia Tech this year, so Rutgers knows how to do something on the road, I guess. And is this their best chance to get bowl eligible? They just need one more. Maryland, not very good. I think Rutgers keeps this one close and potentially finds a way to win the game outright. All right, let's recap them here. Mike's going with Tennessee plus 210 in the first quarter against Georgia. Emory going out on a limb plus 390 with San Jose State against Boise State. Chip just gave us all the great reasons why Arkansas plus 385 against Texas makes sense. And I'm going Rutgers plus 185 at Maryland. All right, let's talk some off-the-radar games this week. Chip, I'm going to start with you. There's one that you mentioned to me before the show. You said, one of my favorite picks of the week happens to be my alma mater, but you're not going to pick them, right?
Yeah, I think we might have a wrong team favored situation with Houston and Arizona. It's a Friday night game. Houston is finally starting to get a little bit of confidence. You know, their offense was so horrendous early on, and they are by no means good or imposing. But again, when you've got a first-year head coach like Willie Fritz, when you're taking over a roster that's in total transition, the fact that your quarterback Zion Chris is starting to finally get comfortable with what you want to do is so important. You know, that big win against Kansas State, a lot of that was from the defense being able to bow up against the run game. And I think they're going to be able to do that against Arizona as well. The vibes could not be more horrendous with the Wildcats. And so I just think that as you've got two first-year head coaches, they're kind of trending in opposite directions. And I would say that I would rather have the Cougs than the Wildcats, even with that game being on the road.
It's going to be a very late night drive for me on the way home from that one, Chip. I really hope that you're wrong. Probably aren't, though. Emory, you always give us a treat for an off-the-radar game. I can't even imagine what you have cooked up this week.
Well, it's an FCS play. And again, stay on SportsLine. Before my battery dies and get me at his frozen screen, go on SportsLine Saturday. You'll find a bunch of FCS plays. But go and check out Montana State and UC Davis. Montana State is 10-0. UC Davis 9-1. They beat Montana last week. Could they upset the Bobcats, who've been blowing teams out? This is the toughest game since week 0 versus New Mexico, in which they won. So that's a great game to watch, and also one to bet on once you see the plays on Saturday on sportsline.com.
All right, you just gave it. Use promo code winners, 60% off. Mike, you'll also have plays all over SportsLine DFS and different things that you give out. Give us another play here that we should look at off the radar.
It's those team totals I want to isolate. Clemson and Pittsburgh. Give me Pittsburgh's team total under 21.5. They're not scoring 3 touchdowns on that Clemson defense. I also like it in the first half, under 10.5. They might get a touchdown. They might get a field goal. They're not getting a touchdown and 2 field goals. They're not getting 2 touchdowns.
Give you an off-the-radar play here. How about Air Force? This line keeps trending downwards against Oregon State. They finally got their first win last week. The line is 3.5 now. Oregon State on a 4 or 5 game losing streak. Air Force is 1-8. But hey, you know what? Everything seems to be going right for the Falcons. I think right now, they pull the upset over Oregon State. All right, guys, a great show once again. For Chip Patterson, Emory Hunt, and Mike McClure, I am Eric Cohen. Thanks for watching the Early Edge College Football Pick Show. And as I always like to say, let's hit it big. Good luck.